my late mother was a violinist, a professional musician, and it seemed like the feeling was that I was going to become a musician. I went to elementary school in New York City, a school called PS6, and they had a music program. This was in the 4th grade. And I had struggled with the piano, and I wasn't really getting anywhere with the piano, and I don't know. But my parents, I think my mother said, "Oh, you have an opportunity to study an instrument. You're way too old for the violin." I was 10 years old. She said, "Violin's not going to work for you, but why don't you play a wind instrument, the clarinet or the flute?" And somehow she said the clarinet first. So I picked the clarinet. And also, I think right around that same time, maybe it was sort of sneaky planning by my parents, but I was listening to records of the Rhapsody in Blue, of course, hearing that great solo, and the Creation of the World, Mio's Creation of the World, also has this great jazzy clarinet solo. And I think my parents actually had a recording with Benny Goodman playing that solo. And it was so great, and I was like, yeah, I really liked the clarinet. I liked how it was so bubbly, you know, and so I picked the clarinet, and I started studying in elementary school. And, you know, I had a cousin who had an old Yvette Schaefer clarinet, which he gave to me. But before that, actually, so we are filming on location at my apartment on 95th and Riverside, and the first place that I rented a clarinet was virtually around the corner. It was at a shop called Levitt and Elrod on 96th between Broadway and West End, right where the Salvation Army store is now. And it was this great old funky disorganized crazy shop. Now, so we're talking around 1966 in New York City, and the Upper West Side was kind of grungy at that time. So here was this place, but I loved going into that store and renting the clarinet and cork grease, and there was a whole mystique around all the stuff and all the equipment. So you know, and then I got my cousin's clarinet, the Yvette Schaefer, and I was playing in school. Oh, and another person, when I got my own clarinet, we went to this guy, Murray Snyder, who was one of the big repair guys, and he had a little studio in the Carl Fisher building down in Union Square, and went up there, and he was the master repairman, and on his wall were pictures of Leon Rushnoff, Stanley Drucker, Charles Russo, who taught at Manhattan School. You know, these were these legends of the clarinet up on the wall. And I was like, wow, you know, 10 years old, just very impressed by all of that. When I was 11, I got, again from my parents, a gift of an LP of Bechet of New Orleans. And, you know, as I said, my mother was a violinist, my dad, amateur singer, and, you know, there was always music in the house. But when I heard Bechet, that was like I found my niche. I found my place in music. So it wasn't just like, oh, this is doing my parents' thing. I heard this great artist, the way he played the clarinet was so singular. I felt like he was talking to me. I felt like he was literally telling me a story with his clarinet. And I was like, wow, this is what I want to do with music. I want to tell stories. I want to paint pictures. I want to be an individual. I want to put my stamp on it. Right? Even from 10 years old, I had that vision of myself.
So when you were 10, were you taking private lessons yet? When did you start studying?
I started studying privately pretty soon after that. And I studied with a guy named Joel Press, who is in his 80s now. He lives half time in New York and half time in Boston. And he had actually become a kind of a Boston legend because he opened his home up every day for jam sessions. And all the musicians nicknamed it the Institute because people would go there and jam every day. And he had a lot of the great young Boston players would come through, and then some of the established people. A guy named Gray Sargent, a guitar player, who was at last year's Grammys, I think, playing with Tony Bennett. So, interesting people went through the Institute over in Newton, where Joel had a house. I think he still has that house over in, not quite sure. But anyway, Joel is a wonderful guy, and we're still in touch. And so he was my first teacher. So he had studied with Leon Rushnoff, but was also a jazz musician. So this got me started learning classical and jazz at the same time. And I think that was key for my career because I already had that flexibility, that I was getting into the world of improvisation, of being able to swing on the instrument and, do those sorts of things. So Joel got me started on that. And I remember I must have been 12 years old, and I got a gift certificate for $30 to Sam Goody's, which was the big record store. And that was down in the 49th and Broadway or something like that. And I picked up, for that price, I picked up, I think, 6 LPs. And that included Coleman Hawkins' Body and Soul, and there was a Henry Red Allen, some of the great classic jazz, a Lester Young, a Bud Powell disc, and I went with Joel, and that was such an adventure to go with my teacher and buy those LPs.
That's missing now. Everything's on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Or you can just get it on iTunes or SoundCloud. So it's great because it's really convenient and you can get right to it. But that adventure, I remember going to Tower Records. You would recommend something for me to listen to, and if it wasn't at the library at school, I had to go buy it.
Yeah.
It was an actual journey.
Yeah.
To get there.
I mean, I can think of so many stories around these LPs I bought. Just another one was when I was a kid, I was with my Aunt Miriam up in Woodstock, New York, and we were browsing around in a bookstore, and I saw this book called Bird, The Legend of Charlie Parker. So I said to her, is that a famous musician? And my Aunt Miriam said, I think I've heard of him. So we were both clueless. But I bought the book and started reading, and I got really curious about him. And I went to either Sam Goody's or, it might have been the other place, that place that just died about a couple of years ago, Colony Records.
Oh, yeah.
And so I bought this LP of Charlie Parker's, but he was going under a pseudonym because he had a contract for another label. So he was called Charlie Chan. Charlie Chan was a famous character in the 1930s serials, those little movies where they'd give you 10 minutes and then they'd leave you on a cliffhanger and say and until the next episode. So then there was this, and his wife's name was Chan. And so he used Charlie Chan, but I knew that because I had read that in the book. And so I go up to the counter, little kid, and I put the LP on the counter, and I'm going to plunk down my $5 or whatever. And the guy at the counter, African-American guy, said to me, he said, "Son, you know who that is?" And I said, "Yeah, man, it's Bird." And he goes, "Okay, you got it." He really wanted me to know that I was buying a Charlie Parker record.